Unless you're the APA against the Public Enemy, most wrestlers don't intentionally go out of their way to hurt their opponents during matches. A good worker knows how to make their moves look impactful without actually harming the other person, but some stunts can go wrong and kayfabe enemies have to become real-life saviors. These 10 performers should all be very grateful that they weren't up against Bradshaw and Farouk in these matches, otherwise things may have gone very differently. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 times a wrestler saved their opponent from serious injury. Join us! Number 10, Logan Paul saves Rey Mysterio at Crown Jewel 2023. Crown Jewel 2023 will go down as the night Logan Paul won his first piece of wrestling silverware when he beat Rey Mysterio for the United States Championship. However, it could have easily been the night where Little Rey somehow got even shorter by jamming himself headfirst into the mat. Mysterio went for a springboard moonsault on his opponent, but Logan was slightly out of position. Just as it looked like the Lucha legend was about to piledrive himself, Paul lunged forward and caught the high flyer on his shoulder, transitioning seamlessly into a power slam. So even though Paul has since admitted that his inexperience meant that he wasn't in the right position initially, it cannot be overstated how impressive it is that a guy in just his 8th professional match managed to improvise so quickly and come to the aid of one of the all-time greats. Number 9, Kane saves Dolph Ziggler at Money in the Bank 2010. Wrestlers getting caught in the ropes can either be pretty funny, like when Triple H had to rescue Steve Austin at SummerSlam 1999, or utterly horrifying, like when Mick Foley had his ear ripped off. Thankfully, the same fate did not befall Dolph Ziggler at the 2010 Money in the Bank pay-per-view, thanks to a little help from the Big Red Machine. A spot was supposed to go down where Kane would tip Ziggler out of the ring and onto a ladder lying at ringside, but the show-off's leg decided it didn't want to play ball, getting tangled up between the first and second rope. Had Ziggler fallen with more velocity, he might have pulled a muscle or even broken a bone, not to mention how uncomfortable it is to hang upside down for a long period of time. Instead, the veteran demon was on hand to free Dolph from his predicament before any harm was done. See, Kane's not all bad. Just forget about that time he set Jim Ross on fire, or when he electrocuted Shane McMahon's nutsack, or the Katie Vick stuff, or... Wait, what was I talking about again? Number 8, Fandango saves Cody Rhodes on Raw. The butterfly effect is the name given to the idea that one seemingly insignificant action can cause a chain of events leading to something massive. So, with that in mind, I present my theory that, without Fandango, there would be no AEW today. On an episode of Raw in July 2013, the ballroom dancer was facing off against Cody Rhodes when the American Nightmare went up to hit a top rope moonsault. Rhodes got all the height on the move, but not enough distance, and would have gone crashing into the mat had his opponent not desperately scrabbled forward to soften the impact at the last second. Though it doesn't look like he made much of a difference, it's still a pretty awkward landing. Having your fall broken by another person is way more preferable to smacking into the canvas of a wrestling ring, especially if you haven't braced yourself. Had Dango not made the save, Rhodes may have seriously injured himself, or been put off wrestling entirely by the whole experience. No Cody, no formation of AEW. It all makes perfect sense. Okay, I may have exaggerated slightly, but you get the idea, and props to the Fashion Files guy. Number 7, Orton saves the ref on Raw. Whilst not strictly speaking about a wrestler saving their opponents, this entry is still a case of a veteran performer stepping in to pull one of their colleagues out of the firing line, in this case quite literally. As much as we would all like to forget the fact, Randy Orton engaged in a long and bitter feud with The Fiend and Alexa Bliss in the lead up to WrestleMania 37. The bitter part comes from the people who were forced to watch it, by the way. On an episode of Raw in March 2021, whilst Orton was battling AJ Styles, Bliss appeared on the Titantron and blew out a match. Then, in the ring, jets of flame shot out from the turnbuckles because Alexa had magical powers now. Though Styles was out of the ring at the time, the referee wasn't. Rather, he was perilously close to the corner of the ring right before the pyrotechnics went off. He could have been burnt to a crisp had the Viper not furiously beckoned him away from the post at the last second. Randy clearly didn't want him to get any heat for that spot. Sorry, not sorry. Number 6, Edge saves Devon Dudley and Matt Hardy on Raw. The Attitude Era tag teams of Edge and Christian, the Dudley Boys and the Hardy Boys, made careers out of putting themselves in incredibly reckless predicaments, so it's strange to think that any of them were thinking about safety at any point during this period. Yet on the January 31st, 2000 edition of Raw, Edge clearly remembered some training he'd been made to sit through. After a match between Christian and Devon, all three teams got into the ring and started to brawl. Matt and Devon went up to the top rope for a spot that involved them both falling backwards through a table, unaware that a chair had accidentally been placed on top of the hardware. Knowing that his pals were about to put themselves in harm's way, the long-haired Canadian sneakily yanked the chair off the table moments before Matt put his opponent through it with a DDT. This might seem like a small detail, especially considering who we're talking about here, but all of the big high spots these teams did were meticulously planned. An errant prop could have caused some serious damage, yet another reason to love Mr. Copeland. Number 5, The Undertaker saves Test on Raw. Of all the finishing moves out there in the big wide wrestling world, one that looks like an absolute nightmare to take is The Undertaker's last ride powerbomb. A regular powerbomb from the gigantic Texan would be bad enough, but for this version, he lifts his victim up even higher before slamming them straight down to the mat. Give me 20 tombstones any day of the week. One wrestler who almost found out the hard way just how dangerous the last ride could be is Test, who came face to face with the American Badass on Raw in 2001. If there's one thing you need to know about Test, it's that he was a big boy, billed as a mighty 6'6". What could possibly go wrong with a move where he gets lifted up over someone's head? Whilst hoisting his massive opponent up for the last ride, Taker realised that he wasn't going to be able to lift him the full height. Then, in a flash of genius, he leant backwards against the ropes to steady himself before finally powering the Canadian up to complete the move. As I said earlier, last ride, no bloody thanks. Number 4, Kevin Owens saves Shane McMahon on SmackDown. Remember when Daniel Bryan returned to wrestling after we all thought he'd gone for good? Remember when his first match back was him teaming up with Shane McMahon to take on Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn? In the build-up to that match, Owens and Zayn launched a vicious assault on the boss's son on a March 2018 episode of SmackDown. This involved wrapping a chair around Shane's neck and jamming it into the ring post, a nasty-looking move that could have been much nastier in real life. As Shane was falling backwards to sell the move, the top of the chair was positioned so that when it hit the ground, it would have jammed upwards into his neck. Owens noticed this and, as casually as you like, caught the chair and changed its direction so that Shane would fall down safely on his backside instead. It's so subtle that you wouldn't even notice it if you weren't looking, but this minor adjustment might have just saved Shane McMahon from a very serious injury. Imagine if after years of jumping off tall structures and being chucked through glass, this is what did Shane in. Well, this or a leapfrog. Number 3, Curt Hennig saves Chris Jericho on Nitro. Over his long and varied career in the squared circle, Chris Jericho has almost never made any serious mistakes in the ring. That said, perhaps his biggest botch came on the December 29th, 1997 episode of Monday Nitro during a match with Curt Hennig. Y2J had his opponent set up for his patented lion salt and he went to hit his trademark backflip. Little did he know that this decision could have cost him dearly. When Jericho jumped backwards off the middle rope, he failed to fully rotate. His head was on a collision course with the mat until the knees of a Hall of Famer came to his rescue. In a moment slicker than Danny Zuko's hair, Henig quickly pulled up his legs so that Jericho could land on them instead of the canvas. So instead of braining himself, Lionheart just slid comfortably down to the ground. This is a textbook example of just how good of a wrestler Henig was, that he was able to react to something like this so quickly and turn a potential disaster into just another blown spot. There is a reason they called him Mr. Perfect. Number 2, Luke Harper saves Mustafa Ali at WrestleMania 35. The late, great Brody Lee was a very nice man. If the countless stories of good deeds he performed throughout his life aren't enough to convince you of that, then firstly, you monster, and secondly, check out the time he prevented catastrophe on the grandest stage of them all. During the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal at WrestleMania 35, Lee, who was going by his Wyatt family alias Luke Harper at the time, had Mustafa Ali up for a vertical suplex on the apron. Braun Strowman was meant to rush over and give a big boot to Harper, eliminating both men in spectacular fashion, but the monster among men jumped his cue and hit the move way too early. As Harper and Ali fell off the apron, the latter was in a position to crash headfirst into the floor below. Miraculously though, Harper was able to tilt Ali backwards in midair so that when he did the land, he landed on his back instead. Just how Brody knew that A, Ali was in danger, and B, he could do something about it is beyond me, and just another example of how great the guy truly was. Number 1, AJ Styles saves James Ellsworth on SmackDown. It's not just the moves, the promos, or the beautiful hair that make AJ Styles so brilliant, it's his incredible ring awareness. Case in point being when he saved James Ellsworth from accidentally breaking his own neck. SmackDown, October 2016. The Chinless Wonder is in a match with the WWE Champion, thanks to special guest referee Dean Ambrose. Of course, Styles battered the poor lad and went to put him away with a Styles Clash. For most wrestling moves, the way to keep safe is to tuck your chin into your chest, but not for the Styles Clash. That is the one thing you don't want to do. Clearly, Ellsworth forgot this as the jobber tucked ahead of taking the move. Had it gone ahead as normal, it likely would have broken his neck, but AJ knew exactly what to do. Right before he hit the mat, the Phenomenal One put out his hands to take all the force and give Ellsworth some extra space. What looks like a tiny adjustment actually did a whole lot of good. But how did Styles even notice that Ellsworth was out of place? Skill? Experience? Flat Earth magic? Whatever it was, thank heavens it worked.